Hi class, welcome to today's lesson. This goes with homework 19, which is on intercepts. So what an intercept is the place where the graph crosses the x or y axis. So the x-intercept is going to be where you cross the x-axis, so right there, and the y-intercept is going to be where you cross the y-axis. And one of the things we're going to be kind of particular about when we're handwriting things is that the intercepts really should be written as a point. So we're not going to say a y-intercept of 3. We should say a y-intercept of 0, 3. When you're doing the online homework, just make sure, does it say to write it as a point or not? But in general, like on exams and things, I like you to write them as a point. So if we have a graph, it could actually have multiple x-intercepts. So here's a sample picture, and let's use green so it's different than the graph. I can see that it crosses the y-axis right here, and so that place where it crosses the y-axis is the y-intercept. So I'm going to say there's a y-intercept at it looks like it's down at -4. So at 0, -4. That's going to be the y-intercept. And there's actually two places where it hits the x-axis, right there and right there. So there are two different x-intercepts. And so I would say it has an x-intercept that's at -2, 0. So this one right here is at -2, 0. And this one that I hit on this side looks like it happens at 1, 0. So two different x-intercepts. And again, you might find if you have a more general graph that you have several of these things. So we are, remember, focusing on our linear equations, and these are going to have graphs of lines. And so with a line, you're going to have at most one x-intercept and one y-intercept. And I say at most because sometimes you won't have either. So here in this first example, just as a reminder that I've written the equation in standard form. Here in this first example where it's in standard form, the line crosses the y-axis, so we can see that right there. That's your y-intercept of 0, 4. So that's your y-intercept. And it crosses over here at 6, 0. So that's your x-intercept at 6, 0. So that standard form line actually has two, and that's the typical situation. We've talked about two weird situations. If I have x equals 3, it's a vertical line, and in that case, all it's going to have is the x-intercept 3, 0. And so sometimes when you're doing the homework, you're going to say, well, it doesn't have a y-intercept, something like that. And a y equals line, which is always something horizontal, is going to have just the y-intercept. So this has the y-intercept 0, -1, and it actually has no x-intercept. So what is the math that we do? So the math that we're going to do is we're going to substitute in 0 for y, meaning I'm not going to go anywhere on the y-axis. That's why I'm plugging in 0 for y. And then I'm going to figure out what the x is that goes with it. So this is like in homework 17 where we found sort of the missing value in the point. And so I'm going to do 3x minus 5 times 0 equals 15. 5 times 0 is 0, so I got 3x equals 15. Divided by 3, divided by 3, x equals 5. So I get, remember, I'm going to write it as a point, 5, 0. So that's my x-intercept. For the y-intercept, we're going to do the opposite thing. We're going to get a point that looks like 0y, and so we're going to plug in 0 for x. And then figure out what the y is that goes with that. Be really careful when 3 times 0 is 0. That negative is still there. So this is negative 5y equals 15. And we get y equals negative 3. Remember, we're dividing to get the y by itself. So we have 0, negative 3 as the y-intercept. So here we have another one. I'm going to find the intercepts, and then I'm going to use them to graph the equation. So my x-intercept, my y-intercept. I'm going to set y equal to 0. Set x equal to 0. So 2x minus 5y equals 10. And so I'm setting the y equal to 0. So I'm going to put a 0 in. 2x equals 10. X equals 5. So I have an x-intercept at 5, 0. That means somewhere over here. Setting x equal to 0, 2 times 0 minus 5y equals 10. Here again, we have that negative that stays with us. Dividing by negative 5, I get y equals negative 2, and I'm going to write it as a point. Keep reminding yourself writing it as a point. 0, negative 2. And then I can connect the dots, which I always have trouble doing on my tablet. So that's what that line looks like. So homework 18, we plotted whatever points we wanted, and we used those to graph. But sometimes finding the intercepts, these specific points, make a better way of drawing the graph. And in fact, they're typically the way I'm going to draw a graph when it's in standard form, this ax plus by equals c form. Sometimes you'll have a line that actually goes through the origin, through 0, 0, and in which case finding the intercepts isn't super helpful. So I'll give you an example. If I go to do my work, x-intercept, y-intercept, set y equal to 0, set x equal to 0. When I set y equals 0, I get 0 equals 3x. I divide by 3, I get 0 equals x. And I get 0, 0 is the x-intercept. And when I set x equals 0, I get y equals 3 times 0, y equals 0. And I get the same exact point. So finding the intercepts is not enough to graph this equation. I don't have enough information. I can't just slap some line down. I need another point. I can pick any point that I want to be the other point. So in my case, this is going to be like that old school table that we did to begin with. I'm going to pick x equals 1. I could pick x equals 2 and then figure out some other points on this graph. So when x equals 1, y equals 3 times 1, which is 3. So I get the point 1, 3 on the graph. And just if I wanted a third point, when x equals 2, I get 3 times 2, which is 6. So I get the point 2, 6 on the graph. And again, we're going to tolerate my horrible sketching. The line goes through those points. So just because you find the intercepts doesn't always mean you're done. So in this case, if your intercept is that middle point, that origin, you're going to have to do something else. So homework 19, find those x and y intercepts. Make sure you know how to find them. And you could use those to graph the lines in a lot of the situations. Email me if you guys have questions.